For 26 years, the Lexus RX has been the embodiment of restrained elegance and Japanese reliability. It's the SUV your neighbors trust, the vehicle that financial advisors drive, the safe choice that never disappoints. But the 2027 RX 350 throws that playbook out the window, and honestly, I'm not entirely sure how I feel about it. Lexus has made a calculated gamble here, one that could either redefine the brand for a new generation or alienate the very loyalists who made the RX America's best-selling luxury SUV for over 2 decades. What we're looking at is a vehicle that prioritizes emotional appeal over rational perfection, and that sentence alone should tell you just how much has changed. The question we need to answer today is simple. Did Lexus evolve, or did they lose their way? The first thing that hits you about the 2027 RS 350 is what's missing. The spindle grille, that polarizing but unmistakably Lexus design signature, has been radically reimagined into something that honestly looks more Scandinavian than Japanese. We're looking at a cleaner, more horizontal aperture that's closer in philosophy to what Volvo has been doing than what we've come to expect from Lexus. The headlights have adopted a sharper, more aggressive squint, measuring approximately 42 inches across with integrated LED technology that creates a distinctive light signature. Here's what's interesting. Where the BMW X5 has become almost too aggressive and the Mercedes GLE tries too hard to look athletic, Lexus has found the middle ground that feels contemporary without being overtly hostile. But here's my honest take. In trying to appeal to everyone, there's a risk of becoming invisible. The front fascia is handsome, well-proportioned, and thoroughly modern, but it lacks that instant recognition factor the old spindle grille provided, whether you loved it or hated it. From the side, the 2027 RX 350 stretches approximately 192 inches in length, riding on a wheelbase that appears to be around 112 inches, giving it proportions that are notably more balanced than the previous generation. The roofline flows more gracefully toward the rear, creating a fastback silhouette that's clearly aimed at competing with the sportier profiles of the Audi Q7 and even the Porsche Cayenne. The character line that runs from the front fender through to the taillights is more pronounced, more sculpted, creating shadows and depth that the outgoing model never achieved. What really stands out are the wheel arches, which have been flared more aggressively to accommodate what looks like 21-inch wheels on the higher trims. But here's the thing. While this side profile photographs beautifully and will absolutely turn heads at the country club, I wonder if Lexus has sacrificed some of the rear seat headroom that made the RX so practical for families. The pursuit of style sometimes comes at the cost of function, and we'll need to see final specifications to know if that trade-off was worth it. The rear fascia represents perhaps the most dramatic departure from Lexus tradition. The taillights span nearly the entire width of the vehicle, connected by a light bar that's become almost mandatory in the luxury segment. It's a design choice that works on some vehicles and feels derivative on others. On the RX 350, I'd place it somewhere in the middle. The lights themselves feature an interesting layered LED design that creates depth, but the overall composition lacks the distinctive character of Mercedes-Benz's taillight designs, or even the sophisticated simplicity of what Volvo achieves. The lower bumper integrates dual exhaust outlets that appear to be functional rather than decorative, which is refreshing in an era where even performance vehicles often fake their exhaust tips. My personal opinion? The rear is handsome and modern, but it's also the most generic angle of this vehicle. In a parking lot full of luxury SUVs, you might actually have to look twice to confirm this is a Lexus. This angle reveals the full picture, and it's from here that the 2027 RX 350 makes its strongest visual statement. The way the roofline integrates with the D-pillar, the stance created by the wider track, and the overall proportions come together in a way that feels cohesive and premium. Lexus has managed to create a vehicle that looks planted and purposeful without the excessive muscularity that some German competitors employ. The question is whether this design successfully bridges Japanese refinement with European sportness, or if it falls into the trap of being neither fish nor fowl. From where I'm sitting, Lexus has created a handsome SUV that will age well, but they've also created something that feels less distinctly Lexus than any RX before it. That's either progress or dilution, depending on your perspective. Step inside the 2027 RX 350, and the transformation continues. The dashboard architecture represents a complete philosophical shift from the button-heavy layouts that characterized previous generations. We're looking at a floating dual-screen setup, with what appears to be a 14-inch main display and a secondary 12-inch digital instrument cluster. The materials are where Lexus still maintains its advantage over most competitors. The synthetic leather on the dashboard is convincingly realistic, the stitching is precise and elegant, and the overall fit and finish rivals anything from Stuttgart or Munich. What's changed is the aesthetic, where Lexus interiors once felt warmly traditional, almost library-like in their sophistication. This new cabin skews more minimalist, more contemporary. Here's my honest assessment. The quality is still there, absolutely, but some of the character has been sanitized away. The Germans have been pushing Lexus toward minimalism for years, and Lexus has finally yielded. Whether that's what RX buyers actually wanted is another question entirely. The front seats offer power adjustment with what looks like 16-way adjustability on higher trims, along with heating, ventilation, and massage functions that have become expected in this segment. The seat design itself is interesting, with more prominent bolstering than previous RX models, suggesting Lexus wants you to think of this as a sportier vehicle. For long-distance comfort, which matters enormously to the 45-plus demographic that makes up the core RX customer base, these seats appear well-contoured with good lumbar support. The second row offers what looks like generous legroom, possibly around 38 inches, with reclining seatbacks and heating functions. Compared to the Mercedes GLE or BMW X5, the RX 350 seems to prioritize comfort over sportness in the seating, which is actually the right choice for this vehicle. My take? Lexus understands that their buyers spend more time commuting and traveling than they do carving canyon roads, and these seats reflect that priority. The infotainment system appears to be Lexus's latest generation interface, and if initial impressions hold true, this might finally be where Lexus catches up to the German competition. The screen positioning is better than before, angled slightly toward the driver, and the graphics appear crisp and modern. The Mark Levinson audio system returns as the premium option, and in previous generations, this has been one of the finest sound systems available in any SUV. What we're looking for here is responsiveness, intuitive menu structures, and wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto integration. The fact that Lexus took this long to fully modernize their infotainment is honestly frustrating, but better late than never. My concern is whether the learning curve for existing Lexus owners will be steep. When your customer base skews older and values familiarity, radical interface changes can be alienating. The 2027 RX 350 comes equipped with Lexus Safety System Plus, which has been upgraded to include more sophisticated adaptive cruise control with lane centering capability. The system now offers hands-on semi-autonomous driving for highway conditions, putting it closer to Mercedes' driver assistance package or BMW's active driving assistant professional. The parking assistance has been enhanced with a surround view camera system and automated parking for parallel and perpendicular spaces. Here's what really matters to the target demographic. Does the technology enhance the driving experience without overwhelming it? Based on what we're seeing, Lexus has been thoughtful about implementation. The head-up display is larger and more configurable. The blind spot monitoring has been improved, and the rear cross-traffic alert now includes automatic braking. My opinion? Lexus has avoided the feature overload trap that some competitors fall into. These technologies serve practical purposes rather than existing merely for marketing specifications. Under the hood, the RX 350 retains a naturally aspirated V6 engine, likely an evolution of the 3.5-liter unit that's been a Lexus staple, producing somewhere in the range of 295 to 310 horsepower. In an era where turbocharged four-cylinders have become the norm, even in premium SUVs, Lexus's commitment to smooth linear power delivery from a six-cylinder engine is actually refreshing. The transmission appears to be an 8-speed automatic, prioritizing refinement over aggressive shift times. All-wheel drive comes standard, using a system that can vector torque between the front and rear axles for improved handling and traction. Compare this to the BMW X5 with its turbocharged inline-six producing 335 horsepower, or the Mercedes GLE with similar outputs, and the Lexus seems slightly undergunned on paper. But here's my analysis. Lexus buyers don't cross-shop based on 0 to 60 times. They value reliability, fuel efficiency, and long-term ownership costs. After 3 decades of watching Lexus play it safe in the luxury SUV segment, something remarkable has happened with the 2027 RX 350. And I'm not talking about evolutionary changes or minor updates. Lexus has made a decision that frankly shocked me when I first examined the specifications and design direction. They've abandoned their comfort at all costs philosophy. This is not the Lexus your father drove, and honestly, I'm still processing whether that's genius or a fundamental misreading of their core buyer. But here's what makes this fascinating. In an era where Mercedes is softening the GLE and BMW is making the X5 more compliant, Lexus is zigging while everyone else zags. The question is whether their traditional buyer, someone who chose Lexus specifically to avoid German firm suspension and complicated electronics, will follow them down this new path. And wait until you hear what they've done with the pricing strategy, because that might be the most surprising element of all. The front fascia of the 2027 RX 350 represents what I'd call controlled aggression, which is a phrase I never thought I'd use to describe a Lexus SUV. The spindle grille, which has been divisive since its introduction, has evolved into something more three-dimensional and honestly more resolved than previous iterations, where the current RX looks like it's trying too hard to be noticed. This 2027 model integrates the grille into the overall design with more sophistication. It's still large, still unmistakably Lexus, but there's a refinement here that suggests the designers finally understand how to work with this signature element, rather than just applying it as a corporate mandate. The headlight signature has moved to a split-level design that creates visual width without actually changing the vehicle's dimensions. It's a clever trick that Mercedes has been using for years, and I'm glad to see Lexus catching up. The upper DRL element sits almost flush with the hood line, while the main lighting unit integrates into the front fascia, with better proportion than we've seen in recent Lexus products. The lighting technology itself appears to be full LED matrix with adaptive capability, which is table stakes in this segment, but still worth noting for its execution quality. Now, here's where my opinion gets interesting. Compared to the BMW X5's more traditional and arguably timeless face, or the Mercedes GLE's tech-forward but somewhat cold expression, that RX 350 is trying to split the difference between athletic and elegant. The problem is that in doing so, it might not fully satisfy either camp. The Genesis GV80, which has been quietly stealing sales from all the established players, manages to look both sporty and stately simultaneously. The Lexus feels like it's still searching for that balance. The lower fascia features larger air intakes than previous RX models, suggesting improved cooling for what I suspect will be a more powerful, or at least more thermally demanding powertrain. But the detailing here, the way the intakes integrate with the bumper, lacks the surgical precision you find in German competitors. From an international perspective, this front design will play differently in various markets. European buyers, particularly in Germany where I've spent considerable time observing luxury SUV preferences, tend to favor understated elegance with technical precision. This Lexus front end might be too visually busy for Munich or Stuttgart. American buyers, especially on the coasts, have shown more willingness to embrace bold design. Polish and Italian markets fall somewhere in between, though Italian buyers in particular appreciate design cohesion and might question some of the detailing choices here. My personal take is that Lexus has improved the front design, but hasn't yet achieved the mastery that comes naturally to brands with longer histories in this segment. It's competent, occasionally striking, but not yet iconic. The rear design of the 2027 RX 350 tells a different story, and frankly, a more successful one. Where the front tries to make multiple statements simultaneously, the back of this vehicle shows restraint and maturity. The full-width taillight treatment, which has become almost mandatory in modern luxury vehicles, is executed with genuine elegance here. The light signature uses a geometric pattern that creates visual interest without becoming gimmicky, and more importantly, it's immediately recognizable as Lexus, even from a distance. The rear glass angle is more rakish than the current generation, sacrificing some cargo visibility for improved aerodynamics and a more coupe-like silhouette. This is a clear signal of Lexus chasing style over pure utility, which again speaks to that shift away from their traditional positioning. The spoiler integration is subtle, built into the roofline rather than added as an afterthought. It suggests attention to aerodynamic efficiency without screaming about it, which feels appropriate for a vehicle that should prioritize refinement. One detail that caught my attention is the lower diffuser treatment. It's more pronounced than previous RX models, with actual functional elements rather than just decorative plastic. This suggests Lexus is taking aerodynamic management seriously, which should translate to better high-speed stability and potentially improved fuel efficiency. The dual exhaust outlets are integrated into the bumper design, with better visual balance than the current generation, though I suspect these might be decorative surrounds for a hidden actual exhaust, which has become common practice even in luxury vehicles. The rear proportions work better than the front, in my opinion. There's a cohesiveness here that suggests the designers were more confident in their vision. The way the rear quarter glass meets the D-pillar creates a clean geometric form that doesn't rely on excessive character lines or surface complexity. It's mature design, which should age better than more trendy approaches. Comparing this to competitors, the Mercedes GLE rear still looks more technically sophisticated, with lighting that appears more advanced and detailing that seems more precisely executed. The BMW X5 maintains a more classic SUV proportion that some buyers will prefer for its timelessness, but the Lexus holds its own in this company, which wasn't always true of previous generations. The Audi Q7, with its continuous light bar and clean surfaces, might still have the edge in pure design elegance, but that RX 350 is competitive in a way that earlier models weren't. The profile of the 2027 RX 350 reveals the most significant departure from Lexus tradition. And this is where we need to talk about what they've actually changed. The character line that runs from the front wheel arch to the rear taillight is more aggressive, more deeply sculpted than any previous RX. This creates drama and visual interest, but it also creates complexity that might not age as gracefully as simpler approaches. The surface treatment above this character line features what designers call tension surfaces, where the metal appears stretched tight over the underlying structure. It's a technique that requires exceptional panel manufacturing quality to execute properly, and early images suggest Lexus has the production capability to pull this off. The wheel arch treatment is more pronounced, with wider fender flares that give the vehicle a more planted stance. Lexus appears to be offering this model, with wheel sizes ranging from 19 to 21 inches, which is consistent with the segment. The wheel designs I've seen show a mix of traditional multi-spoke patterns and more contemporary turbine-inspired designs. My concern here is whether Lexus will spec the appropriate tire and wheel combinations for ride quality, because this is where luxury SUVs often stumble. A 21-inch wheel with low-profile performance tires might look fantastic, but it will fundamentally change the ride character that Lexus buyers expect. The greenhouse proportion, meaning the glass-to-body ratio, is more compressed than previous RX models. The belt line is higher, the windows are smaller, and the overall effect is more muscular, but potentially less airy inside. This is a trade-off that prioritizes exterior presence over interior openness, and it's a choice that tells us something about who Lexus thinks is buying this vehicle. They're designing for people who want their luxury SUV to look substantial and powerful from the outside, even if that means some compromises to the interior experience. Overall road presence is genuinely improved over the current generation. The 2027 RX 350 looks more expensive than it is, which is high praise in this segment. It has presence without being ostentatious, at least by current luxury SUV standards. Parked next to a BMW X5, they'd occupy similar visual space, but the Lexus would draw more second looks, for better or worse. Next to a Genesis GV80, which has been universally praised for its design elegance, the Lexus holds its own, but reveals certain areas where the Korean brand has executed with more sophistication. The panel gaps and exterior material quality, judging from pre-production examples, appear consistent with Lexus standards, which means excellent. This is an area where Japanese brands still maintain an advantage over German competitors, and it's something that becomes more apparent over years of ownership. The paint quality, the way panels align, the consistency of gaps, these details matter more to long-term satisfaction than most reviewers acknowledge. My personal verdict on the exterior is mixed but leaning positive. Lexus has created a more distinctive, more memorable design than recent RX generations. They've taken risks, which I appreciate, but in doing so, they've moved away from the timeless elegance that made the RX appealing to a certain type of buyer, someone who didn't want their vehicle to make a loud statement. Whether this new direction expands their buyer base or alienates existing customers is the fundamental question, and we won't know the answer for several years. The interior is where the 2027 RX 350 most clearly reveals Lexus's new direction, and it's also where my concerns become most acute. The dashboard architecture abandons the traditional Lexus approach of wrapping the driver in soft materials and replacing physical controls with a more minimalist, screen-forward design. The center display is a 14-inch unit that dominates the dashboard, and while it's certainly impressive from a technology standpoint, I question whether it serves the needs of Lexus's traditional buyer demographic. The infotainment system is reportedly a new generation platform that Lexus has been developing specifically to compete with Mercedes' MBUX and BMW's iDrive 8. The interface appears to rely heavily on touch input with some redundant physical controls for climate and volume. Here's my concern. Buyers in the 45 to 65 age range, which represents over 75% of RX buyers, often prefer the tactile feedback and muscle memory of physical controls. Touch screens, while driving, require visual attention that physical buttons and knobs don't. Lexus is moving toward an interface philosophy that might not align with their core buyers' preferences. The material selection shows typical Lexus attention to quality. The leather appears to be semi-aniline grade with proper grain texture, not the overly processed stuff that some competitors pass off as premium. The wood trim, assuming they're still offering it, looks like actual wood rather than printed plastic. These details matter to buyers who keep their vehicles for 8 or 10 years. The metal trim pieces appear to be actual aluminum rather than plastic with metallic coating. These are areas where Lexus traditionally excels, and they seem to be maintaining those standards. Driver assistance technology is comprehensive, as you'd expect in this segment and price point. The suite includes adaptive cruise control, with lane centering, blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert, and what Lexus is calling their advanced parking assist system. The cameras provide a surround view with supposedly higher resolution than the current generation. My experience with Lexus safety systems has been generally positive. They tend to be less intrusive and more refined than some competitors, though they've lagged behind Mercedes and Tesla in actual capability. The connectivity features are where things get interesting for international buyers. Lexus has apparently developed separate systems for different markets, which is both practical and frustrating. North American versions will have deep integration with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, while European versions will prioritize different services based on regional preferences. This market-specific approach makes sense from a business perspective, but can be frustrating for buyers who travel internationally or for expatriates who might prefer different configurations than their market receives. Luxury amenities appear comprehensive but not segment-leading. The front seats offer heating, ventilation, and massage functions with what looks like good adjustability range. The rear seats recline and slide, which is useful for optimizing either passenger comfort or cargo space. The panoramic sunroof is larger than the current generation, addressing one area where the RX has been criticized. Climate control is 4-zone, allowing rear passengers independent temperature management. Space utilization is actually where I have some criticism. The more aggressive exterior styling, particularly that higher beltline and more rakish roofline, appears to have compromised interior headroom, especially for rear passengers. The cargo area behind the second row looks similar to the current generation, which means adequate but not class-leading. The BMW X5 and Mercedes GLE both offer more versatile cargo management systems. The Audi Q7, especially in its 3-row configuration, provides more practical space for families. What's missing compared to competitors is telling. There's no mention of rear-wheel steering, which Mercedes, BMW, and Audi all offer in this segment to improve both tight parking maneuverability and high-speed stability. The ambient lighting system, while present, doesn't appear to offer the customization depth that Mercedes provides. The digital instrument cluster, while sharp and configurable, doesn't have the visual sophistication of Audi's virtual cockpit or BMW's live cockpit. What does provide genuine advantage is the predicted reliability and the user interface logic that, despite being more screen-dependent, will likely be more intuitive than German systems. Lexus has always understood that technology should serve the driver rather than requiring the driver to serve the technology. Even as they move toward more complex systems, there's hopefully still that underlying philosophy of usability. My personal opinion on the tech integration is that Lexus is trying to have it both ways, offering cutting-edge interfaces to appeal to younger buyers while maintaining enough traditional controls to not alienate their existing base. Whether they found the right balance is questionable. The tech feels current without being bleeding edge, which might be exactly right for buyers who want advanced features without feeling like they need a computer science degree to adjust the climate control. For the mature buyer demographic that represents the majority of RX purchases, this interior will feel simultaneously familiar and foreign. The quality is there, the attention to detail is there, but the user experience philosophy has shifted toward prioritizing visual technology over tactile interaction. Whether that's progress or a loss of what made Lexus special is a matter of personal preference, but it's definitely a calculated risk on Lexus's part. Now we need to discuss what might be the most significant departure from Lexus tradition. And this is where the title of our discussion really comes into focus: the expected performance characteristics of the 2027 RX 350, based on the specifications Lexus has released and their recent engineering direction, suggest a vehicle that prioritizes dynamic capability over isolation comfort to a degree that would have been unthinkable for Lexus even 5 years ago. The powertrain is expected to be a turbocharged 2.4-liter four-cylinder engine producing around 275 horsepower and 320 pound-feet of torque. This represents a philosophical shift from the smooth, naturally aspirated V6 engines that Lexus built its reputation on. Turbo four-cylinders offer better efficiency and more low-end torque, but they inherently lack the refinement and linear power delivery of a naturally aspirated 6. This engine will be paired with an 8-speed automatic transmission that Lexus has reportedly tuned for quicker response than their traditionally smooth, but sometimes lethargic calibrations. The fuel efficiency projections suggest around 22 miles per gallon in combined driving, which is competitive with turbocharged competitors, but not dramatically better. The real-world efficiency will heavily depend on driving style, because turbocharged engines are very sensitive to throttle application. Drive gently, and you'll see decent numbers. Drive with enthusiasm and efficiency drops significantly. For buyers in European markets, where fuel costs are substantially higher, this matters more than for American buyers. The expected driving dynamics, based on the platform architecture and suspension specifications, point toward a firmer, more controlled ride than previous RX models. Lexus appears to be using an adaptive suspension system with multiple drive modes that will adjust damping rates, steering weight, and throttle response. In comfort mode, the system should provide a reasonable approximation of traditional Lexus isolation. In sport mode, the suspension will firm up considerably, which should improve handling precision, but will also transmit more road surface information into the cabin. Here's where my analysis gets critical. The handling characteristics that Lexus is reportedly targeting would position the RX 350 closer to the BMW X5's driving experience than to Mercedes GLE's comfort-oriented setup. The question is whether Lexus buyers want that. Someone who chose an RX over an X5 in the past often did so specifically because they prioritized comfort over sporty handling. If Lexus is now offering something closer to the BMW driving experience, they might attract some conquest sales from German brands, but they also risk losing existing customers who will wonder why they shouldn't just buy the BMW. The power delivery character for this market segment should be adequate but not exciting. 275 horsepower in a vehicle that will likely weigh around 4,500 pounds means decent acceleration, probably 0 to 60 in around 7 seconds, which is competitive but not impressive. The torque curve, assuming it's similar to other turbocharged luxury engines, should provide strong mid-range acceleration for highway passing but less of the high-rev excitement that characterized older naturally aspirated engines. How this positions against German rivals in driving experience is fascinating because it reveals Lexus's strategy. They're not trying to out-comfort Mercedes or out-sport BMW. They're attempting to find a middle ground that might appeal to buyers who want some of both.